pretty early adapters to things, the majority leader of the House. We actually get a lot of our information from each other and feed off of each other. And so he told me about TweetDeck. And once I got TweetDeck and put it on the screen of my computer at the House of Representatives, I got it. I got that this was really a news feed. This is about generating news. This is about generating, you know, information. I use it as a news feed personally for knowing what's going on in different areas that I'm interested in, but I also then can create things. And so I think the first time I really used Twitter was probably the session of 2009 when I was tweeting, and people can talk about this, I was tweeting from the speaker's rostrum, which some people thought was, oh, horrible, that I would be listening to the debate and tweeting about what was going on. And probably my most famous tweet during a legislative session was in the middle of a Governor Pawlenty press conference that was happening over in Governor Pawlenty's reception room that we weren't invited to and weren't really allowed into, where he stood up and said that if we didn't do exactly what he wanted us to do as the legislature, then he was prepared to do a whole set of things like on a lot. Okay, you may think that's very basic and whatever. And so I tweeted back, I tweeted immediately and said, oh, there he goes again, Governor, go it alone. Which a reporter then looks at the Twitter feed, looks up and says, the speaker says your name is Governor Go It Alone. What do you think? And it stopped him in his tracks, and he actually got flustered. And that press conference and those moments became part of the lawsuit that we would later join, and actually that we were upheld on with the state Supreme Court about the separation of powers. And so this stuff has real impact on the debate and what's happening, and I can talk about it from a candidate perspective. You know, I have a whole different relationship with it as a person because people follow me, and I think that what Rachel said is important for candidates, that it is authentic. I don't know that you have to do all your own tweets. I did. I liked doing it. The only times when we didn't do my own, you know, when I wasn't doing my own tweets is if I was out of service range, which does happen in the state of Minnesota. And so then Rachel would run by me, we'd be talking about the event, we would call each other on the phone, then she would go in and maybe post something. But I would say 97% of my tweets were my own, and that was actually a real relationship building thing. I think in the governor's race, it was fascinating the first time a delegate said, I have not been contacted by anyone, and I think, you know, like 4 of us immediately were on top of that person, like, hi, can I call you right now? And, you know, and then they would tweet about that. They would tweet about, you know, who was responsive, who wasn't, who they never heard from, those sorts of things. You know, I think the interesting question was the what could have been was how to take this into state government, how to use it in state government, how to continue to use it. Hopefully the new governor will do that in the state of Minnesota. We were poised to do that. We were ready to do that. I'll have a new platform to do that on in the new role I'm going to play, but it was pretty, I think it was pretty exciting to watch. One of the funnier pieces of the whole Twitter experiences, I am much younger than my siblings. So my siblings are all 14 to 20 years older than me. And two big things that happened in the campaign that I was like, wow, this stuff is catching on. First of all, my brother Bruce, who's known as Bruce the Builder out there, is a construction guy. He has his own construction company. And he would be our regular updater of like, he'd be like, now 1,500 people are following you. That's great. Or he'd be like, 2,000 people are following you. And I'm just like, you know, here's a guy sitting in Nicollet, Minnesota, and, you know, watching this stuff and really, you know, paying attention and getting engaged. Someone who hadn't been civically engaged was getting more and more engaged, and he's turned that over to the Walls campaign now in terms of what he does and how he's involved. And I think that's kind of a cool thing. And then Dave Kelliher, I have to embarrass him, is in the audience. And Dave is a little more of, like, he said he does not have a Facebook page. He does have, and the thing that I knew we were kind of, either he really had not seen me in a long time and was worried about me, or just wanted to keep checking up on me is when he created a Twitter account and started following me. And there's nothing like, you know, having your spouse following you on Twitter, keeping track of where you are. It's pretty interesting. So he now has tweeted a couple of times, right? But I'll stop there and we'll do questions.
At least I think in my generation we're very concerned about our parents following us.
Yes. Well, and I honestly, a former girlfriend of our son's, he's 16, and so a former girlfriend, he told me about her, and I immediately went and friended her on Facebook without asking, and it was bad form. Let me tell you. She accepted, but it did. I like walked in the house, and he said, "Did you friend Olivia?" And I said, "Yes," and he said, So I waited to friend the current girlfriend who's been his girlfriend for like a year. For 9 months I waited or something.
Poor Patrick, we've created a month.
Right, well, now, are there any questions?
I have a question for the panel. I'm wondering how you can make a case and an argument to an organization, small business, or a campaign for a well-organized, strategic social media campaign. Often, this is going to fall onto perhaps a marketing manager, a communications manager. Many of these organizations aren't going to have a specific social media employee. So I'm wondering how you can start to incorporate that, sometimes facing generation gaps and understanding. So really that making the case as in regards specifically to deliverables. What can these organizations, groups, or small businesses gain?
Well, I think I would pose that question to them. What are their expectations of jumping into this? Because is it just because you have to meet that? We're not on Facebook, we got to be on. Yeah. You know, 15 years ago it was, we don't have a website, we need a website. Well, what are you trying to do on the website? You know, what are your goals and objectives, and what are you trying to do, and then let's try to meet that.
And one of the key challenges is if you don't have a goal, or even maybe it's a 2-hour discussion, but if you don't set up a goal for why you're doing this, 6 months down the road, how do you measure it? You know, how do you hold an employee accountable, or how do you figure? And that's a problem again and again when folks say, "Oh, well, our competitor has a Facebook page, let's create one too," and that's not going to help you, an organization.
I think one of the things is you have to take it seriously and convince them that it's not a matter of just, you know, something you just do on the side. In the sense that you may feel pressure to do it because your competitors are doing it, whether it's business or electoral or whatnot. But when you do it, you really have to take it seriously. It's going to be an ongoing time slot. And so my boss is still convinced that a website means you spend a couple of hours, you set it up, and then you walk away from it. And when you do that, your site doesn't get any traffic. And so we just do what we have to do behind his back, more or less. And you know, and as long as we're effective, he knows we're being effective. That's what his job as a manager is, right? To make sure we're doing a good job, and he doesn't have to know how we're doing a good job. But there has to be, I mean, in an ideal situation, the boss would understand that there's an ongoing time commitment required, and that it's worth that ongoing time commitment. So don't try to soft sell it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think putting together an actual proposal is definitely where you're going to want to start. And a good resource for me, just because there are many different channels that you can access in terms of finding the information that you need to help you with whatever your social media issue is Mashable. You can actually find different metrics and ways of measuring, because again, I think it depends, you know, are you selling a product? Are you trying to create buzz? Are you actually looking for there to be a two-way conversation of businesses reinventing itself and they want to know what actually appeals to people? And in my experience, not at all talking about Margaret, the generation gap is something that comes with social media. Currently at the Iowa State University Foundation, and they've approached me to put together a proposal for them. And one of the hurdles that I'm going to have to jump is sort of illustrating why we need to be involved in social media. Because if you're not actually going to make this a role for a current employee and giving them the time and the resources they need to actually have this be effective, then you probably need to hire on a new person, because again, you're taking this seriously to take care of that role. And you have to illustrate for them in some way why this needs to be taken seriously, and it's not just a polish or a flourish on part of your business plan, it's a cornerstone, it's a piece of it. So you wouldn't randomly just put up a billboard on the side of the highway that somebody, was like, Margaret Anderson Kelliher, and it was red and white paint, we'd like throw sparkles up there. You'd actually want it to look professional, you'd want it to be on message, you'd have somebody maintaining it, and you'd have somebody measuring how much traffic is on that highway, and whether or not at night there's lights on it so that people can see it. I mean, how many times is somebody calling your business or organization on the phone and asking for your location? What are the questions that they're asking for? How can you solve that with social media? In the same way that you would want any product or piece of your marketing or communications plan to be, again, on message and professional, social media is a part of it. Now, if they don't want to essentially jump into that stream now, then that is an option. It's not just, well, let's have a website because we have one, or let's create a Twitter handle because that's what somebody does. It's essentially non-existent if you're not using it, and you can wait. You can wait until you have the resources to launch your business's identity on Twitter, because it's better to do it well, or just don't do it at all, is my advice.
I have a question, just as you spoke, a lot of people do still prefer email. It may be irritating, but that's just the way it is. And how would you have any advice about, especially with campaigns, kind of tempering the number of emails as well as the urgency? I mean, when you look at Obama, the fierce urgency of now, it seemed like every other day the world was going to collapse if we didn't give them $5. And I'm not saying that that wasn't effective, don't get me wrong, but I do think though that, that message can kind of get lost, or it is very easy, as you spoke, to simply ignore.
Well, I think this is a really interesting question, from having been a candidate and now not being a candidate and seeing it differently. So I got on a list in Colorado, this year. And let me just say, if Carrie Kennedy sends me another email, I probably will send her like $10, because I just want it to stop, but I know it won't stop, because every time I fire up the email, I'm not talking about like one time a day, I'm talking about they're doing it, the urgency, but you want to create that urgency. See, that's the thing. So as much as it's annoying you, they actually want you to have the reaction that I had today, which is like, if that Carrie Kennedy campaign sends me one more email, I'm just going to have to break down and do it. It's like the pledge drive on NPR. It's like, stop, just stop. Will it stop if you do it? And so that is the point. The point is creating that urgency. Now, the good news is this campaign's going to be over in less than 2 weeks, everyone. And so then that will hopefully slow down a little bit. I think that's the question. But you want to, in an action-oriented, where you're trying to make people take action, vote, give money, do something, sign up for your event, you want to create urgency around it. Now, if you're doing something different in your goals, you're trying to create the conversation, you're trying to spark a discussion, you're the place that people go to learn about something, then it's a different sort of that. But that's actually the point. The point is urgency.
So if I could follow up on that. I queried an online campaigning email group about their value of Facebook versus Twitter versus having an email list person. And I said, in my mind, someone on my email list is worth 10, that's high. And Twitter, maybe followers were 2 or 3, and a Facebook page liker is 1. And am I crazy here, or am I way overvaluing email? And that was